Welcome, everybody. We're all set up. We're just going to wait one more minute to give folks a few who are joining us right at 6:30 the opportunity to get here. Um, Sheila, I see that you have your hand up. Your microphone and your video is disabled right now. If you want to type what your question is into the Q&A box at the top of your screen. Um, there's a series of icons. There is a chat bubble that has a question mark in it, and then the letters Q and A underneath of it. Just type your question right in there, and then Abby, my colleague who is on the line with us, she'll be able to answer your question. Awesome. All right. Well, it is 6:30, so in the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the fourth month of Cooking with Plants. Tonight we are talking about plant-based proteins. I'm Kelly Wilson. I'm a registered dietitian here with our lifestyle medicine team, and I'll introduce myself in a moment. But before we get started, I just wanted to go over a couple housekeeping things. If you would like to have closed captioning as part of today's class, on the top toolbar for Teams, there's three dots. It's kind of on the right-hand side of your toolbar. It says More underneath of it. If you click that, you go to Language and Speech. You click on that, and then there's the option to turn on live captions, and that will take the words that I'm speaking and type them out on the screen for you so you can follow along with the text as well. Like I said just a couple minutes ago, you all are muted and your cameras are turned off. And that's not because I don't want you to interact during this class. It is purely so that when we make the recording, it's cleaner and it's easier for folks who may be watching after the fact to focus on the content that's being presented or the screen where cooking is happening. You should be seeing two screens right now. You should be seeing a PowerPoint slide with the Cooking with Plants title and maybe a small version of my face or my head. And then you should be seeing a screen with a skillet and a stovetop. And if you aren't seeing those, please let us know and we'll try to help you troubleshoot. If you have questions that come up during class today, please use that Q&A feature. That's how we want you to interact. We definitely want you to ask questions. If it's a question that is relevant to the content of the class and what we're talking about, Abby will interrupt me and will ask that question so I can address it during class. If it's something that is related either to you personally or would be better answered via email, I will include the answer to your question in our follow-up email after class tonight. Okay. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, I'm Kelly Wilson, and I am a registered dietitian, nutritionist, and I work here at Trinity Health Ann Arbor. See our fancy new aprons with our logo on it in our lifestyle medicine department. I'm also board certified in lifestyle medicine, and lifestyle medicine is this evidence-based field of medicine that takes a therapeutic approach using 6 key pillars to treat, reverse, and prevent chronic disease. The 6 pillars that we focus on are a plant-forward approach to eating, which this class series covers, joyful movement, stress reduction, sleeping soundly, avoiding risky substances, and social connection. So in our practice, we work with patients on all 6 of those pillars, not just nutrition. We have this cooking class, we do one-on-one appointments, and then I'll tell you at the end of class about a virtual class series that we have coming up that you may also be interested in. I'm also trained in culinary genomics, which is just a fancy way of saying how the science of food and cooking influences our gene expressions. And I have a background in organic farming. I've got a certificate in organic farming from Michigan State University, and I was an organic farmer for 3 years. So I wear that hat and bring that lens to our culinary conversations as well. I'm really excited to be teaching these classes because I really think that anybody can cook. And my hope with these classes is to inspire you, whether you're just used to using a microwave or you're a seasoned kitchen veteran, to add more plant foods into your daily life, and really hope to show you how easy and simple and tasty it can be. And I encourage you, if you're new to cooking, just start where you are and start small. I promise these recipes are really easy. We use a lot of frozen ingredients. You can sub in fresh. You can swap in ingredients that you're more familiar with. Just start with where you are. But the biggest thing is to just start. And be patient with yourself too as you're making change. Change takes time, takes about 66 days to form a new habit. So persistence is key here when you're adopting either, whether it be a new plant forward way of eating, more movement, whatever lifestyle change. Just be persistent and be kind with yourself on that journey. So I am not the only one on our lifestyle medicine team. This all these beautiful faces here is the rest of our crew. Abby in the blue shirt, she is on the line with us and will be answering your questions. Clisty in the purple shirt, she does a lot of behind the scenes tech support for a lot of our classes and is a diabetes educator. Laura in the center, there's also a diabetes educator, and she is here in the kitchen with me tonight. She helps me do dishes, which I greatly appreciate. And then we get to eat the food together that we prepare, which is also really lovely. Lisa in the red shirt is our director and also the dietitian for the Detroit Red Wings. And then Dr. Lou and Dr. Daniel are our lifestyle medicine physicians and champions of lifestyle medicine within the hospital. This is an outline of our cooking series. So like I said, today we're on class 4. We're focused on plant-based proteins. If you have not signed up for the full series, you just found your way to today's class only. If you scan that QR code, it will take you to the registration page so that you can sign up for the remaining classes in the series and receive the link to our class website where the recordings of our prior classes live. So scan that QR code. It'll also show up later after we do our cooking so that you can register for those remaining classes. All right, so today's class, like I said, talking about plant-based proteins. We're going to talk about the benefits of proteins, talk about some commonly asked questions that we as dietitians receive when we're talking about plant-based proteins and plant-forward eating. Go over some sources of protein on a plant-forward diet, and then we'll get to the fun part of cooking 3 plant protein focused recipes. Before we get started going over the benefits of protein, I just want to mention that this class focuses on general health and well-being, not necessarily disease reversal. So I will be using some ingredients like salt or olive oil, for example, that are totally fine for most folks to consume. But if you have a specific chronic health condition, say, for example, heart disease, those may be ingredients that you want to avoid. So if you're dealing with a chronic health condition and you have not spoken with a registered dietitian or your physician about the best dietary pattern for you, highly encourage you do that before you make any drastic changes. Now, that being said, most people can add plants into their diet with abandon without any negative consequences. So these recipes and their focus on plant forward ingredients are totally fine for most people. All right, so let's get to the good stuff. Protein benefits. So I think there are 3 major macronutrients. Let's start there. We've got carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Protein gets a lot of focus these days. It's kind of like the golden macronutrient, but all three of those macronutrients are equally important for us to focus on. And I would say protein's probably one that we could tend to focus even a little bit less on. Even though it has all of these benefits, most people get way more protein than they need, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the benefits of protein, though, are many, as you can see here on this list on your screen. Protein is really important for immune health, for muscle building and repair, which that's kind of the common one a lot of people think of. It's really helpful for blood sugar balance and satiety, so that feeling of fullness too, because it takes our body a while to break down the protein molecules. It's really important for the production of enzymes and hormones as well. And when we're eating plant-based sources of protein, we're receiving some additional benefits, which is pretty cool, and why I'm excited to be talking about this tonight. You're receiving all of those general protein benefits, but plant-based proteins also have a ton of fiber, which we've talked about in previous classes, all the benefits of fiber from, again, regulating satiety and blood sugar balance and feelings of fullness and helping with butyrate production and feelings of good mood. And plant-based proteins, they're plants, right? So they're also chock full of a lot of phytonutrients. Phyto means plants. So these are bioactive compounds that we can only get in plant-based foods. Our fruits and veggies and whole grains are rich in these bioactives, but plant-based proteins are as well. And we'll talk about some of those during our recipe portion. And then another really exciting benefit that I think is on top of mind for a lot of people these days is the lower carbon footprint that these plant-based proteins have. So there's some research out of the University of Michigan right here in our backyard that says that switching to a plant-based meal, so a fully plant-based meal, just one day a week, is basically the equivalent of not driving your car 1,100 miles. Now, 1,100 miles is a distance from Ann Arbor to western Nebraska. So it's a very long distance and a lot of driving. You can have that impact just by switching to a plant-based meal one day a week. Pretty huge. Some frequently asked questions that I think we as dietitians get when we're talking to people about plant-based protein sources is one, can I get enough protein? What's this about combining proteins? Do I need to eat my beans with the bowl of rice in order for the protein to work properly? And should I be worried about soy? Is soy okay? We're going to go through each of these right now. So the first, can I get enough? The short answer is yes. Now, protein needs, they do vary by age and gender and activity level, and based on the health concerns that you have. But the average person only really needs about 15 to 20 grams of protein per meal. And if you're looking at the slide here, you can see that you can get protein pretty quickly. So this chart on the slide, you got half cup of beans, half cup of rice, and 1 cup of broccoli. So pretend you're eating a grain bowl. You've got your rice on the bottom, you got your black beans on top, your cup of broccoli, maybe you threw some salsa on there, and boom, you've got 15 grams of protein right there, fully plant-based. Okay, so it's fairly easy to get to that protein goal without really having to worry about it. And I don't want you counting. You don't need to count because, like that example we just went through, you're going to get to that 15 to 20 grams without really thinking about it if you're eating a varied diet. So just like we've said before, eat the rainbow, vary the types of foods that you're getting, and you're going to meet those needs. Now, what about combining foods? So proteins, they are made of strings of amino acids. There are 20 amino acids. Humans can synthesize in our bodies 11 of these, but there are 9 that we need to get from food. And these are called the essential amino acids, or EAAs, as is abbreviated here on the screen. Plant proteins contain all of these essential amino acids, and they aren't missing them, but some types of plant foods have higher concentrations of some essential amino acids, while other plant-based foods have higher concentrations of other essential amino acids. At one time, it was thought that we needed to combine, beans with rice because one was higher in one essential amino acid and the other was higher in another essential amino acid. But now we know that that's not true. We don't have to do that in each meal. As long as we are getting, again, a variety of foods throughout our day, throughout our week, our body is storing those essential amino acids and using them on an as needs basis. So if we have our rice, we have our beans, we have our all sorts of our other veggies, we've got our soy proteins, we're getting what we need and we don't have to worry about combining things in a particular meal. Now, we get a lot of questions about soy, and people wonder, if should I be worried about it? Should I be worried about its connection to cancer? What about its relationship with thyroid? The short answer is you don't need to worry about consuming soy protein. Again, as long as you're consuming a varied diet and it's not the only thing that you're eating, it's totally fine. And there are tons of health benefits to consuming soy. There was old research that was, I think, created a lot of this concern around soy, but the latest research shows that soy is actually cardioprotective. It's rich in isoflavones. Um, it helps actually prevent prostate and breast cancer and their reoccurrence. There's a lot of research in populations who consume soy regularly. So, a lot of Asian countries, they have lower rates of prostate and breast cancer. And soy is a really wonderful source of vitamin B6, which is crucial for serotonin, which is one of our brain's feel good chemicals, and melatonin, which is the hormone that helps regulate our circadian rhythm and help us fall asleep and stay asleep at night. B6 is critical for the production of both of those hormones. Soy is a rich source of it. B6 is also really important in our body's methylation pathways, and this is a process in our body that a carbon and 4 hydrogen atoms are added to compounds that and kind of activates and turns on those compounds. And this is a critical process for pretty much every pathway in our metabolic system to work efficiently and effectively. So soy is a great source of that B6 that supports that process. And then it's rich in antioxidants. Genistein, in particular, is really helpful to that end. And as it relates to thyroid, for folks who have normal thyroid function, you don't need to worry about consuming soy and that affecting your thyroid hormone production, as long as you're consuming adequate iodine, either through iodized salt or preferably through sea vegetables. So things like nori, which is the wrapping that you'll see on oh my gosh, on sushi. I don't know why that word was not coming to me. My brain just blinked out for a second. So the seaweed wrapping on sushi, that's nori. Kombu is kelp, so you'll see it dried in long strips. That's another great source of iodine as well. So as long as you're consuming iodine with the soy, no problems related to your thyroid. Okay, so let's talk through those plant-based sources of protein. We're going to focus primarily on soy foods today in our cooking. So we're going to start there with our descriptions here. So soy milk is the soaked and pressed mature soybeans. So you can see here on the slide, there are these brown, tiny little like seed looking things. Those are soybeans. Those are mature soybeans. So think about in the fall when you're driving around the backcountry roads in Michigan or wherever it is that you live, you may see fields of kind of the dried, dehydrated soybeans. Those are ready to be harvested, and they will look like this when they're harvested. Those are mature soybeans. Um, the soybeans are soaked in water, pressed, and then you get this milky liquid that's commonly fortified. So calcium's typically added to it. If you are going to consume soy milk, look for unsweetened. Okay, you can, if you want a slightly hint of sweet, look for ones that have vanilla, but look for ones without added sugar. Soy milk, rich source of protein, 7 grams per cup. So think about this, back to the question about can you get enough protein? 1 cup of oatmeal, dry oatmeal, is 10 grams of protein. 1 cup of soy milk is 7. So if you made oatmeal with 1 cup of soy milk, 1 cup of dry oats, you got 17 grams of protein right there in your breakfast, and you haven't even added any nuts or seeds or anything else to it. So it adds up quick. The next soy food is tofu, and we will be doing something with tofu tonight. And tofu is essentially soy milk cheese, which is, I think, a funny way to think of it, but it's soy milk curdled. So just like making traditional cheese with cow's milk, a rennet is used in the cow's milk process. Magnesium chloride is typically used in the tofu process. So magnesium chloride is added to soy milk. And then as it curdles, it is pressed to separate those curds, so the solid parts from the watery bits or whey. And then it's pressed into the curds, excuse me, are then pressed into blocks. And the amount of time that those blocks are pressed results in different types of tofu. So silken tofu is pressed for the least amount of time, so it has the highest water content, and it's really smooth and creamy. And this is a really good tofu to use for smoothies, for making creamy salad dressings that don't have dairy added to them. And it's really good for making like a silken tofu pie, which is like a cheesecake alternative. And then firm and extra firm are pressed for the longest amount of time, so they have the least amount of water in them. And these are best for things like stir fries, sauteing, baking in the oven. They're going to hold up a little bit better, and they're going to we're more likely to be able to get to that crispy kind of texture that a lot of people like. Tempeh is another soy food that we're going to be working with tonight. Tempeh is a traditional Indonesian food, and it's those mature soybeans that are inoculated with a fungus mixed with a grain and then fermented. And, and instead of tofu's kind of soft texture and neutral flavor, tempeh has more of a chewy and more like meat-like texture and consistency, and a little bit of a nutty flavor to it. And it's very dense in protein, 18 grams of protein per about a third of the package. So, and if you can see this here, the pack, I don't know if you can see my tempeh. I'll hold it up again, but this is about the length of my hand is the tempeh block. So pretty dense protein source. Edamame, which is fresh soybeans. So the mature soybeans are when the soybean plant is all kind of dried out. The fresh green soybeans, think of it like if you've ever grown green beans or snap peas, that would be the stage that you would be harvesting these fresh green soybeans. You may have seen them when you've gone out to eat as an appetizer or seen them in the frozen food section of the grocery store. They come either in a hull, as you can see here in the picture, or dehulled, as you can see the beans down on the bottom of the screen here. We're going to use shelled edamame today in a recipe. The hull is inedible, so it's fun for an appetizer where you can just kind of pop the pods out as you're eating it. But we're making a stir fry tonight, and in that application, I prefer using the hulled soybeans because I don't enjoy the experience of having to pick the pod up and pull the beans out while I'm trying to eat the rest of my dish. If you're okay with that, great. You can use the full bean, not a problem. We're just going to use the hulled ones tonight. All right, so some non-soy based plant-based proteins. We're going to go through a few examples here. We covered beans and legumes in a previous class. So if you missed that, go to the class website. The QR code and link will be at the end of today's presentation, and watch that presentation for more details. But in general, legumes include soy, lentils, and beans as well. And these have about 7 to 9 grams of protein per half cup. So again, if you have a cup of those beans or lentils on top of your grain bowl or on top of your salad, you're getting a huge protein influx, and you didn't really have to work that hard to make that happen. Nuts and seeds are another great source of protein. Hemp seeds have about 10 grams of protein for 2 to 3 tablespoons. Pumpkin seeds, 8 grams per quarter cup, so about a small palm-sized portion. And then most nut butter is about 7 grams per 2 tablespoons, which is about the size of a golf ball. So think back to that oatmeal example, 1 cup of dried oats, 1 cup of soy milk, and say you threw some peanut butter in there, you're getting close to 25 grams of protein for that breakfast, which is a pretty significant amount. And again, over that amount that most people, general population, need per meal. Whole grains are another source of plant-based proteins, and I think these are ones that people often forget about, but quinoa and amaranth in particular are high in protein. We're going to use quinoa in one of our recipes tonight. Manoomin, which is also known as wild rice, it's native to the Great Lakes region, which we are, and is a traditional indigenous food of this region, also very high in protein, coming in at 7 grams per cup. And then we already mentioned oats. And last but not least, yes, vegetables have protein too. In particular, green peas, which are legumes, so no surprise there that they might be higher in protein. They have 9 grams of protein per cup. But these other vegetables that are listed here, broccoli, spinach, asparagus, potatoes, sweet potatoes, Brussels sprouts, veggies that we might not think of as being protein powerhouses when we're thinking of protein foods, they have 3 to 5 grams of protein per cup. It's very easy to eat a cup of steamed broccoli. That's not a large amount, and you're getting 3 grams of protein in that cup. So again, hopefully after going through all of those examples, you can see that if you're eating a variety of foods, you're going to get your protein. You don't have to worry about it, and it'll add up pretty quickly for you. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just make sure we don't have any questions. Doesn't look like it. So we're going to go ahead and get cooking. And today, like I said, we have 3 recipes. I am going to turn my camera down to my cutting board so that you can see what we're working with right now. So we've got, we're going to start with a tofu scramble. But before we do that, we're going to do a preparation step for our tempeh fajita recipe. So we're making 3 things: a tofu scramble, a tempeh fajita, and then a edamame stir fry. So first, we want to steam our tempeh for the tempeh fajitas. So I'm just going to slice this into thin pieces. This is about, 1/3 of the width of my finger. Okay. And we're going to steam this to start the cooking process and to allow the tempeh to absorb the flavors of the fajita seasoning. We're going to marinate it for a little bit. And the steaming process helps those flavors soak into the tempeh a little bit more effectively. So just going across. Something to note, this tempeh is full, like it's raw technically, but you can eat it just like this. You don't have to cook it. But most people, I think, prefer the texture and flavor of it cooked. So we're gonna let that steam the whole time while we're preparing our um, tofu scramble. So to start for our tofu scramble, we are going to cut up some mushrooms. I've got some beautiful, these are baby portobello mushrooms. Typically, if and these mushrooms are pretty clean, so I didn't have to do much to them. You can see here that if you notice you've got little bits of soil or growing medium on your mushrooms, take a paper towel or a clean kitchen towel and just brush them off. Don't run them under the water. They'll soak up that water, and then your mushrooms will steam and you'll get more of a rubbery texture and consistency to them. So I don't recommend doing that. If use paper towel if you can. So we're just gonna I'm gonna turn my skillet on here, get that warming up for us, turn it on low. And we are going to slice our mushrooms. Now, remember our knife skills here, and I am pinching with my thumb and my first finger, wrapping my other 3 fingers around my knife. And then I'm making a claw to hold my food items here. So I'm just going to get some slices, and I'm going to cut these in half because the mushrooms are pretty big. And once we get all these cut, we're going to put them into skillet over here. Also going into this recipe, the recipe that you'll get on the website calls for a clove of garlic and a medium onion. I opted to use dried spices instead of the fresh things tonight, just simply to show you. We've cut onions and garlic together in class before, so I just wanted to give us the opportunity to talk about how you would sub in items if you didn't have those on hand. So garlic, we are going to use a 1/4 teaspoon of garlic powder for every clove of garlic that a recipe calls for. You're still getting some of the health benefits from that garlic powder. And so don't worry about using it if that's what you've got on hand. The onion, we're using onion powder. So it's about 1 tablespoon of onion powder for a large onion. Different if you were going to use the dried onion flakes, the different substitution ratio. So depending on what you have, you want to look that up. But if you have onion powder, it's about 1 tablespoon for a large onion. Okay, so our pan is not quite feeling warm, but for the sake of time, we're going to go ahead and got a little bit of olive oil going in here. Again, if you want to avoid oil or oh, you know why? Because I turned on the wrong burner. That would be helpful if I turned the right one on. If you don't want to use the olive oil, you could use a couple tablespoons of water. Again, it's going to steam your mushrooms. It might change the texture for you a little bit, but it's totally fine, an acceptable way of doing this. So we're going to add our mushrooms in here and let those get going. And meanwhile, we're going to we've got a nice red bell pepper here. Okay, and we're going to dice this up. So there's many different ways that you could cut this. I tend to like laying it down on its side, slicing the top bit off, and then turning it around and slicing the bottom bit off. And then some people like to go around and stick the knife in this way to get out the core. I tend to like just making straight cuts down, squaring off the pepper as I go, and removing this core bit here. So I've got my squared off pieces. I'm going to stack them up on top of each other and make long slices. Bring those back together and cut the opposite direction to get some nice even pieces. And again, you don't have to be perfect. I think a lot of people get stressed out with cooking because they think they're following a recipe and they have to be exactly perfect, or they have to cut things exactly perfectly. It's okay. As long as things are roughly the same size, they're gonna cook about the same time. That's all we're going for. Give yourself some grace. It does not have to be perfect. All right. Got this all chopped up. Gonna add these into our skillet as well. And I'm gonna turn up the heat on the skillet here. So get that going. Okay, and then the top of the pepper. So the stem already popped out here, but if it didn't when you cut it, you can just use your thumbs and really easily pop that out. And typically, I would just cut that up very similarly to how we did the rest of the red pepper. I'm just going to set that aside for now so we can move on to our other ingredients. I'm going to check my skillet here to make sure. Yeah, okay, it is getting warm up. This might take a little bit of time here. So our next ingredient, we've got a small bunch of organic kale. Doesn't have to be organic. Kale is just one of the food items on the Dirty Dozen list. So it's one of the foods it tends to be higher in pesticides. So when possible, it's good to buy organic. If you can't buy organic, regular kale is totally fine too. It's not horribly detrimental to your health. I'd rather you eat the kale and get the folate and the vitamin A and the vitamin C and the vitamin K into your diet than not eat it at all. So a couple different ways you can take the leaves off. I just kind of, you saw me breaking it apart this way. One of the easiest ways to destem it is to hold the kale stem in one end and pinch the stem and the leaves between the fingers of your other hands and just kind of pull down as you're pulling the opposite direction with your other hand. So one hand's pulling down, one hand's pulling up. You're just kind of slightly pinching. You can see that okay. There you go. And there we go. We got a destemmed kale stem. Now I'm going to gather all of those kale leaves up here. And I'm kind of rolling them a little bit to get them into a nice little bunch, make it easier for myself to cut. And then I'm slicing across that bunch to get more bite-sized pieces that are going to cook a little bit faster and be more pleasant for you to chew. Okay, I hear our skillet going. Things are starting to cook, which is good. Give that a little stir here. We're going to keep it up high since I'm running a little behind since I turned on the wrong burner, but that's okay. We'll be just fine. All right, I'm going to add all this into our skillet here. Okay, and next we've got some spices. So they're all mixed here in this container, but what is going in? We've got a 1/4 teaspoon of turmeric. So that's golden yellow in color, and it's going to kind of mimic the egg type coloring that we're used to when we think of scrambled dishes. And you're also getting some great anti-inflammatory benefits from that as well. A 1/4 teaspoon of salt. 1 tablespoon of nutritional yeast. Now, this is nutritional yeast. It is a yeast. It's typically fortified with B12. So for folks who are fully plant-based and not consuming any animal products, this can be a very helpful source of B12. It's also got a nice kind of cheesy umami flavor. So it works really well, kind of gives it a Parmesan-y cheesy kind of flavor to this dish. All right, I'm gonna give this a stir real quick. What's getting good? I'm just starting to cook. And then we also have smoked paprika in here, which it is going to add just a touch of heat and smokiness to this dish, which makes it enhances the savoriness, we'll say. So I'm going to add all these things in here now. You know, the onion powder is a little clumpy, and so I'm just going to break that up a little bit before I add it in so that it more evenly disperses throughout the dish and we don't get just a random chunk of onion in the mouth. All right, so add that in here. Stirring in those spices, and I'm going to turn down my heat just a little bit here. Those things are really starting to sizzle. But you can see the kale has changed color. It's bright green. And the mushrooms are changing color as well. You see they're kind of browning. That's what we're looking for. Is those mushrooms to shrink and brown, the kale to soften, and the peppers to soften. Okay. So last but not least, we've got our tofu. So this is a block of firm tofu. It came in this package like this. I drained it and then I set it out on a plate and drained off the excess water that leached out after it was sitting on the plate. I'm not going to press it. A lot of recipes will call for pressing the tofu to remove more water. This application, we don't need to do that because it's a softer textured dish. But if you were going to make a stir fry, you would drain your tofu, place it on a plate or a cutting board like this, place another cutting board, another plate on top of it, and then something heavy. Let it sit for 20 to 30 minutes or so, and that's going to remove a lot of the excess water, and it'll give you a tofu that actually gets crispy and has a more firm texture and won't fall apart. But again, we don't need to do that for this application because this is a softer dish. We're making basically scrambled eggs, but with tofu instead of the eggs. So because this is in a block, we want to break it up to get to our scrambled kind of texture. So I'm just taking a fork and pressing down on this block here and mashing it up to get to kind of like again, a scrambled egg like consistency and size. Now we're going to dump this into our dish here. I see there's some pieces here that didn't get quite broken up all the way with my fork. That's okay. I'm going to use the side of my spatula here. And then I'm going to stir that all together. And we're going to cook this for about 10 minutes. I'm not going to make you watch that happen. We're going to move on to another recipe while this is cooking. But you would cook this for about another 10 minutes or so. If you notice things are starting to stick to the pan, you could add a tiny bit of water, but the tofu should add enough moisture that you wouldn't have to do that. I'm just stirring to incorporate everything, and we're cooking it for that 10 minutes so that all the flavors of those spices can infuse into that tofu. If you wanted this to be more orange in color, you could add more of that turmeric, maybe another quarter teaspoon. It wouldn't change the flavor too much, and it would give you a brighter orange color, which some people like. So there you go. That's your tofu scramble. We're gonna just set that aside for now so that we can move on to our next recipe. But really easy, really tasty, really great breakfast or really anytime kind of meal. Hand this over to you. On a towel. Oh, yeah, that's what I was saying. Yep. Okay, so our next recipe that we've got are tempeh fajitas. So we steamed our tempeh and we're going to make a marinade for the tempeh. So what we're doing here is we're mixing a couple tablespoons of olive oil. We're mixing a couple tablespoons of lime juice. Okay. And then the spices I have right here, they're all mixed together, but I've got a quarter teaspoon of garlic, or you could use one fresh garlic clove, a quarter teaspoon of salt, half teaspoon of cumin, which is going to add some smokiness, half teaspoon of chili powder, and then a quarter teaspoon of paprika. I'm just going to add that right in here. And then I'm going to take a fork, kind of whisk that all together. I see somebody raised a hand. If you have a question, please drop it in the Q&A, and Abby will interrupt me and I will make sure to answer your question. Okay, so we've made up our marinade and we've got our steamed tempeh right here. We're going to add that into our marinade. Okay, so then we're just gonna stir this up here. Just getting this coated is all we're looking for here. Okay, and I'm trying to be gentle so that I can keep these pieces in nice long strips, kind of like you might have like chicken in your fajitas. So we're gonna set that aside for a couple minutes here. And we're going to work on our stir fry recipe. Okay, so for our stir fry recipe, we are using edamame and some frozen veggies. We've got a cabbage also to cut up and cook, and then we've got a bag of frozen cruciferous vegetables. We're going to start with our cabbage, cutting that. I removed the outer leaves of this cabbage, and we're only going to use half of it. You can use green or you can use purple. It doesn't matter, but the purple, I think, makes the dish prettier, and you're getting also some different phytonutrients because of that purple color than you would from the green. So we don't really get very many purple foods into our diet, so it's a fun way to get this in. So I have removed the outer leaves that were kind of like wilty and that were exposed to the elements of the grocery store. I'm going to just trim this stem end a little bit so that I have a more stable flat surface. I am going to cut the cabbage in half and set one half aside. And then I'm going to core it. So this white part is pretty hard, and we don't want that in our stir fry because it would be challenging to chew. So I'm going to take the tip of my chef's knife, slice down one side, and take the tip of my chef's knife and slice down the other side, making kind of like a triangle here. And voila, we've got the core taken out. So now going to a few more of these leaves are a little wilty, so I want to take those off. I'm just going to make thin slices across the cabbage. So I'm getting not quite like coleslaw thin, but fairly thin here so that it cooks pretty quickly because we are using frozen vegetables for the rest of this dish comes together pretty fast. Thank you, Laura. Yeah, that's good. All right. So I am going to turn on, oh, it's okay. I'm going to turn on my skillet here. Get that warmed up as we're finishing cutting this cabbage. Typically, when you work with cruciferous vegetables, if you can, it's a good idea to follow the concept of hack and hold. Funny language, but cut it up, whether it's cabbage or your broccoli or cauliflower, and set it aside for 30 to 40 minutes. And that allows sulforaphane, which is this really potent influencer of antioxidant production in our body, to develop fully. And if you're cooking that vegetable for just a quick stir fry of a couple of minutes, that sulforaphane stays intact, but that 40 minutes of time allows it to develop fully so that it can withstand that 2 to 3 minutes of cooking. And it's okay, like today we're getting other health benefits from this cabbage. We're not going to worry about that, but every once in a while, good thing to try to do, or eat raw cruciferous vegetables, and you'll get the sulforaphane that way. So I think let's see, there we go. Turn my camera back on there. Make sure you get that. All right, good. We're in business. Okay, so we are going to open up our bag of frozen veggies now. So I've just got a bag of, it's typically, it might be sometimes called California mix. You see it mixed with carrots, but this is just broccoli and cauliflower. I think it's a 12-ounce bag. Yeah, 12-ounce bag of broccoli and cauliflower. Adding that to our skillet here. And then I've got a bag of frozen edamame that we're going to be adding as well. And this is a 12-ounce bag of edamame. Add that in. And just going to add a touch of water here so that get some steam going on, because we didn't use oil here. So this is an example of water sauteing or steaming. Then I'm going to add in that beautiful purple cabbage that we just cut up together. See how beautiful this already looks? So colorful, the purples and greens together. And then we've got some spices and sauce that we're gonna add in. So our spices, we've got 2 garlic cloves if you were using fresh garlic, but today, like I said, we're using powdered. So we've got a half teaspoon, so a quarter teaspoon per clove, so a half teaspoon of garlic. And then we've got a teaspoon of red pepper flakes to add a little bit of spiciness to it. You could add more if you like things really spicy, or add less if you don't like heat at all. Okay, I'm just gonna break up this cabbage a little bit here. All right, and we're gonna go ahead and sprinkle this all in. Give that a good stir. Okay, and then I've got a tablespoon of maple syrup and 2 tablespoons of coconut aminos. Coconut aminos are like a lower sodium soy sauce alternative made from coconut blossoms that have been fermented. It's a little bit sweeter than soy sauce too, so it works really well in these kind of stir fry sauce applications. You get a little bit of salt, you get a little bit of sweet. It's pretty nice. Okay, so we're gonna let that keep cooking, and then we're gonna move back to our fajita recipe. Okay, so the fajitas, they have been soaking up this marinade for the last like 5-10 minutes here. It's perfect. Ideally, like 15 to 20 minutes is what you'd want them to cook at, but we're fine with this time too. It works just as well. I've got a bag of frozen pepper and onion blend. If you wanted to use fresh peppers and onions, totally fine. You're going for about 1 medium or small onion and 2 colored peppers. Okay, so we're gonna turn on our skillet here. And we are going to add in our tempeh. Okay, we're just going to let that get browned up a little bit. So we're going to let that cook for a couple minutes, and then we'll add in our frozen peppers after we've gotten the tempeh to brown just a little bit. So back to our stir fry over here. The final, oh, I did it again. Apparently, I cannot read the burner directions very well. Thanks for the adjustment. Okay, so I am just checking our stir fry here. Yep, checking our stir fry here. The cabbage is getting softer. I just want to get it to a point where it's no longer super crunchy. Can be a little al dente. Needs a little bit more time. But we're gonna go ahead and add in our last ingredient. So our last ingredient for this stir fry is quinoa. We cooked a cup of quinoa with 2 cups of water for 15 minutes until all the water was absorbed. It was covered. So again, this is a 1 to 2 ratio. So 1 cup of grain, 2 cups of liquid. You could use veggie broth if you wanted to add a little bit more flavor to it as well. So I am going to take this and add it into our skillet here. Give that a little stir. Soup. Okay, and there you go. Your edamame stir fry is done. That came together so quickly. The quinoa can be cooking while you're chopping and preparing all of your other veggies. But there you go, voila, complete meal. You've got your whole grain, you've got your protein, you've got your veggies, and all that beautiful color. And then here, back over at our fajitas. Yeah. Okay. We are going to just add in our bag of frozen peppers and onions. Give that a stir. And for this, all I'm doing here is getting this to where the peppers and the onions are no longer frozen. They're warmed all the way through. And then this is ready to put into your fajita shells. So a whole grain wrap. You could put this on top of some brown rice and make a little fajita bowl with some guacamole if you wanted to. Throw a little cilantro on top of it. Very easy, very fast, simple meal. It took us, the most time intensive thing was soaking the tempeh in that easy marinade for about 10 to 15 minutes. So there you go. You've got 3 recipes that are plant-forward proteins. Hopefully got you excited about some soy foods that you may not have tried before. I highly recommend trying all of these recipes. Particularly the fajitas, so easy. If you've never had tempeh before, really tasty. I think you'd really like it. You can also use it with similar spices but crumble the tempeh if you want to make like a taco filling. It works really well in that application. So just a couple things to wrap up. I'm going to share my slideshow again. I know we're right at time, so thanks for your patience here. I just wanted to let you all know that our lifestyle medicine team is doing another virtual class series focused on the foundations of lifestyle medicine. So in this class, we cover, in our culinary classes, we're just covering the nutrition pillar, right? But in this 7-week virtual series, we cover every single pillar. We go deep into the science behind each pillar and the lifestyle recommendations associated with them, and then give you tools and skills for practically applying that information in your everyday life. If this seems like something you might be interested in, I would call your insurance. These CPT codes are for medical nutrition therapy. I will also send this information in our follow-up email as well, if you don't have time to write this down. But verify that your insurance would cover medical nutrition therapy using these 2 codes. And then you can reach out to us at lifestylemedicine@trinityhealth.org if you are ready to register, or if you have additional questions. The class dates are May 8th through the end of June. And we skip the Monday of Memorial Day week. So that's upcoming class series. Laura, who's here in the kitchen with me, will be doing a bulk of the teaching, and then Abby and myself will also be on screen occasionally as well. Just like every other class, we do have a survey to complete, and it would make my heart so happy if you could provide some feedback on tonight's class, what went well, what could have been better. It really helps to make sure that subsequent classes are meeting people's needs, and that this program is aligned with what you all want and need. And then the other QR code on the screen here is for our class website. Again, this is where all of the recipes live and the resources. Tonight's slides and all the recipes will be made available by the end of the week. The recording should be available by next week at the latest. So please go back and check the website for those resources, recipes, and the recording. And I will also send that out in our follow-up email as well. So with that, looking good. We're only 2 minutes over here. We'll go ahead and end class for the evening, but I again appreciate you taking the time to be here with us this evening, and I hope that you learned something new and are feeling excited to try these plant protein foods. Any questions, reach out to us, lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org, and we're happy to answer them. So with that, happy cooking. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you next month.